program is a public access production. Comcast is required to provide time on this channel and make it available pursuant to franchise agreements with the communities we serve. Comcast is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of Comcast or its affiliates.
Welcome to another edition of Discover Tinley, where we talk about people and organizations in town that make Tinley Park a great place in which to live. And as we all know, Tinley Park is a pretty great place in which to live. As usual, the program is brought to you by the Community Resources Commission, the volunteer efforts of the Commission, along with our high school and college volunteers who are ably manning the cameras and back of the scenes things. A lot of volunteer effort putting on Discover Tinley every month, as we've been doing for many, many years. Hopefully everything's going well with you this year. Can you believe it's almost to the end of the year? December is here. Christmas season is here. I hate to say that, but we got things coming up. December 4th, 5th, and 6th, if you're watching before then, is our Christmas in downtown Tinley. So make sure you get to the tree lighting ceremony on Friday night, December 4th. And then Santa's coming to the train station on December 5th and 6th, starting at noon. So bring the kids and have a good time. The Christmas market will be there, the usual Christmas holiday spirit in Tinley Park. So come on out and see the town. A lot of things happening in town, but the biggest thing that happened this year was something that hit Tinley Park a little bit. And our guest tonight is a very special guest, somebody who's been around Tinley just for a little while. Actually a long while. We were surprised back in May where Mayor Ed Zabrocki had to relieve himself of his office and take a little departure due to some very serious health reasons. So Mayor Ed Zabrocki, who had been mayor for 34 years, left office, and we're very fortunate tonight he's agreed to come back. And we're going to talk about 34 years as mayor of Tinley Park. So welcome to Discover Tinley, Mayor Ed.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here, Ron.
Yeah. Let's talk about your background. Where did you come from?
Well, I grew up in the south side of Chicago. I grew up in I call it the Polish ghetto.
Oh,
I didn't speak English until I went to first grade. I was born in this country. My parents were born in this country, but we just lived in the little old neighborhood, St. Michael's Parish in South Chicago, in Immaculate Conception Parish. And then in 1950, when most people were not born that are watching this, we moved to the east side, 112th and Avenue O. And I lived there for a good long time. Went to Mount Carmel High School, St. Mary's University in Winona, Minnesota, and started teaching first of all at Bishop Knoll in Hammond, Indiana for 2 years, and then 42 years at Brother Rice High School in Chicago.
Oh my! And what did you do at Brother Rice? What was your position?
I started out as a teacher, English, and then I got my master's degree plus in clinical psychology, and I was director of counseling services for probably 25, 26 years, and taught 1 or 2 courses in American Lit during that time.
Wow. Whoa,
it was a good run for me. I enjoyed it.
42. I had 39 years in education. I thought that was long enough. You beat me. Wow. So when did you come to Tinley?
My wife and I moved to Tinley in 1970. She was director of nursing at Joliet Junior College at the time, and we lived in a home in Dalton, and we were looking for someplace to move closer, both to Joliet Junior College and to Brother Rice High School. So we kind of looked around and we found Tinley, and we found a home we liked, and it's kind of an interesting story about how we settled on the home. My wife has her family background is farming, and she grew up on a farm, and I grew up on a 30-foot lot in Chicago, a typical type lot. And so we wanted to show our parents the home we're going to buy. So my dad came out and my mom came out, and they said, my God, what are you going to do with this big piece of property? Because the lot was about 66 by 130. And he says, this is just too big of a piece of property. How are you going to take care of that? my father-in-law and my mother-in-law came out and they looked at this and they said, "My God, what are you doing with this postage stamp? Come out to the farm, we'll give you an acre." So my wife and I decided it was a good spot, a good compromise in between.
Wow. Okay, that's good. Yeah. And you lived there for how many
We
years?
lived on Gainell up until 7 years ago, and then we moved to a single-level house. And because the house we were in was on 4 different levels, and as we aged, my knees began to talk to me, my hips began to talk to me, so we went a one-level house.
Oh, thank you. That's what I should probably do. Wow. Well, then, how did you get involved with Tinley Park government at that point?
Well, back about 1971 or so, they were going to put street lights in front of our homes. All the homes were in already. That's the way they did it at that time, and they were going to run some power lines along the side of the houses. And in order to do that, they would destroy some trees because we live in a heavily wooded area, as you might recall, with the big trees. So I went to the village hall to complain. Okay, and said, "How are we going to do? You know, this can't. You're going to tear up the trees. You're going to kill the trees." And then Trustee Frank German came out, looked at it, and said, "Yeah, I see what you're talking about," and worked things out. And they did the wiring of them a little bit later. And he suggested I get involved with the village. I wrote a resume to then Jack Dunn. And in, I believe, about 72, I was appointed to the then Human Resources Commission, which is the genesis of the commission that you are in now, and it represents this program. And there was an opening in 1977, I believe, 1977 for a trustee. I believe Ted Wood was the trustee at the time, and he was transferred. I was asked to fill that spot, and I did. I ran for election for trustee in 1978. No, it was 1979. And in 1981, I was asked to run for mayor, which I did do. There were 4 candidates at the time, and I happened to beat out the other 4 candidates. And the rest, as some people would say, is history.
Well, it's been a good run. You've been reelected.
Very good run.
Yeah. Well, and I think I remember the guy came on the commission when you were chairman, I think.
Right, yeah. I was chairman of the commission then, and you came on, and Rita and some of the other folks. And that was a commission that I kind of got my first taste of government work.
Wow.
Government volunteering, I should say.
Yeah. And you've been good at volunteering all these years. Somehow we don't know to say no, do we?
No, that's the way it happens, Ron. But that's part of Tinley, and that's what makes Tinley a great town. Some people just don't know how to say no.
Exactly.
To these kind of things.
Oh, yeah. What was the village like then compared to what it is now?
Well, there was nothing west of Harlem. Okay, that's a good starting point. Okay, and you could go to what is 167th in Harlem, and there was just the beginning of some subdivisions west of the that little area there south of 167th. The pond over at 167 was just a big swamp. There was nothing there. Brementown was there, and beyond that, you could see all the way to 80th Avenue.
And further, I know because I lived over there, and you could see almost to LaGrange Road.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I should have said LaGrange Road, not 80th Avenue.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. How about the atmosphere of Tinley Park back then?
It was a small town. You had the fall festival and those kinds of things, and everybody knew everybody. And you try to preserve that kind of atmosphere. And at the time when we moved in, there was probably about 16,000 people, 15,000, certainly not more than that. And it's very hard to maintain. And, there are many folks that said, I wish we still could be a town of 15,000. I do, too. Yeah. Through all my years as mayor, I wish we could have stayed that way. But you can't do that, because if we didn't annex those properties, other towns would have. Yeah. And we would not have been able to control what goes on in those towns from a development standpoint.
That's been kind of your philosophy a little bit too, of governing Tinley Park. Let's look out for Tinley Park's interests, and let's take care of things so we have control over what's going on, rather than let somebody else take control.
That was one of the first things we did. Is we got border agreements with all our surrounding towns, so we did not get into border wars with one developer playing one town after another. Well, this town is going to give me this. What are you going to give me? That was one of the first things we did. So we set what our borders were, and also by doing that, we were able to anticipate what we would need as far as roads, water, sewer lines, those kinds of things. And so once we set that, and we were able to loop our lines together and all those kinds of things, it made for a very cohesive community. Now, it's not very sexy, and most people don't understand what that means, but in a long run, it has really helped the community.
Well, I think Tinley Park is noted for its foresightedness. You know, I remember people on the board back then who said, we need to look at this, we need to look at that, and boy, it's paying off now in the long run for some of the things they said we would need in 10, 15, 20 years.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we've done over the years is gone for a very diversified tax base, and that's one of the things I'm really proud of, is that we went for residential, we went for commercial, and we went for warehousing and light industry. Those three things in an economy, one of those will go bad one time, okay? But not all going to go bad all at the same time. And so you don't depend upon each one all the time. It's kind of a diversity, and and I think that was helpful to us for it still is, and the way the land is planned out, it will continue to be that way in the future.
Wow. Let's talk about some of the accomplishments and issues that are most memorable to you now over the last 30. What things stick out in your mind as, gee, we accomplished this, this, and this, and some of the issues that were memorable over the years?
And a couple that weren't memorable.
Oh, okay, we can get into those.
I think you can divide them up, Ron, into two areas: physical things and things that are not physical but point to the quality of life. You know, if you go back over the past 10 years, and Donna Framke would have this information, the number of awards that we have won for being a good community, biggest being coming in 2010, the best place to raise your kids in the U.S. in our population category. I think the important thing to remember is that we did not seek these things out. They came to us. They went and did the demographics. They went and did the background, and then said, Chicago Magazine, one of the top 10 suburbs to live in the Chicagoland area. That points to the quality of the community from not just the village, Ron, but the fire department, the police department, schools, park district, churches, civic organizations, Chamber of Commerce. I like to use the example of, you're looking at maybe one of those old-time lamps, and they're made up of different prisms of light. Oh, yeah. And each prism represents school district, library, whatever, people. And it's that mosaic that come together to make Tinley Park a great community. So it's everybody kind of working together. You mentioned the Fall Festival. One of the things that we've tried to do is to keep that village concept, okay? The Oktoberfest. You mentioned earlier about the Christmas market. Earlier this summer we had the Caribbean Block Party. All those things are kind of community. Bring your family, bring the dog, bring the kids. That's the kind of thing. And I think that's what makes Tinley Park a great community. And by winning those awards, and winning is a interesting word.
Achieving, maybe.
Achieving, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. You know, it points to the entire community. From a physical standpoint, I think the one thing that stands out in my mind is the convention center. I feel very strongly about it. That is one of the major economic engines, not only in Tinley, but the South Suburban area. And I think the only regret that I had about the convention center is we had studies done and said, yes, the convention center would do well, etc. We didn't make it big enough the first time around. We had to put an addition on. But that's a nice problem.
Yeah, right,
okay?
Exactly.
But the point of it is that it's successful. It does well for itself. It brings people not only to the community, it brings people to the area. Before we had the convention center, I don't think we had 100 motel rooms in Tinley. We had over 1,000 now.
Oh my.
Okay, and it's amazing how that has developed. Okay. Those are some of the things that you have, and and I think it's what makes the town is the people willing to volunteer, to put time in for your town, whether it's PTA or church group, whatever it may be.
Well, Tinley Park has been known, since I've been here too, the city of volunteers and down at volunteers. It's always amazed me how many people, I don't know how we compare to other towns, villages, but it seems like we have a large, and even the village government is shaped around volunteer commissions and people.
Well, we have roughly, I'm not sure the exact number anymore, but it's probably somewhere between 14 and 15 different commissions. Okay. And the commissions act as advisories to the board, whether it's the LRPC, Economic Development Commission, Veterans Commission, whatever it may be. they have their own focus, and they advise the board on what kind of things they need to do. And that has worked well through the years. They address the various human needs, et cetera, that kind of thing, as your commission does, the Sister Cities Commission, although that's not as active as it used to be, simply because the economics of flying to Europe back and forth is a little bit more expensive, but they address the human needs of our community.
What's been your philosophical approach to governing? How have you, as mayor, approached governing Tinley Park? What's been your philosophy?
You try to be
on
as responsive as you can. Let me explain a little bit what that means. My own philosophy. I've been mayor for 34 years, and I was a trustee for 3 years. My telephone number has been in the phone book that entire time. It has never come out. And I feel very strongly about that. When people have an emergency issue or something, they should be able to contact you, and you should be able to respond. Through the years, I've gotten literally thousands of phone calls. I have returned at least 99% of them. Now, somebody's going to find one someplace, a couple a year that I did not. Okay, fine. That, but
nobody's perfect.
99% have been returned. And I think that's important, that when they call the mayor's office, the mayor calls them back, not somebody else calls them back. I think that's important. There's having your name in the phone book, and when you're mayor of a town of 60,000, 57,000, is both good and bad. The bad part is, you're literally at the mercy of some folks. I don't mind if somebody calls up and says, "Look, this is happening. I need a police. I need fire." That's an emergency. But when a guy calls me up on a Wednesday night at 9:30, complains to me that his garbage was not picked up last Saturday.
Oops.
That's a bit much. Okay, I don't need that.
Right.
But as mayor, I've been on call 24/7, 365. It's just my own philosophy. I had an agreement with the radio room that if there was a death, major accident, house fire, whatever it may be, I was called, regardless of time or day. I was called. And, I can remember going out and talking to people as we watched their house burned. And one of the things that we did along with the police department is that we had we do have, I assume we still have, an agreement with a couple of the hotels. If somebody gets burnt out or there's an emergency, we'll put them up in a hotel for a couple of days and a motel for a couple of days. And there's several restaurants who have volunteered that said, okay, if that happens, and the family needs to come and eat, we'll take care of it for them. And I think that's kind of indicative of what the town is like. Okay, we're going to pull together. Somebody has a hard luck, let's all pull together on it. But that has always been kind of my philosophy. I went to many different things, Chamber of Commerce dinners, all kinds of things, because I think it's important from a visibility standpoint. Too often, government, you don't see the government, okay? Right. You don't see the government. People see, well, okay, I'm going to go to the meeting on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. That probably represents 10%, if that much, of what the job entails.
If that much, that probably less.
That's probably closer to 5.
Yeah, right. Well, let's talk about the kind of time commitment you made as mayor of Tinley Park, and also some of the sacrifices you made as mayor of Tinley Park.
Well, one of the things with, I had a fantastic working relationship with Brother Rice High School. They allowed me to take phone calls. The principals through the time says, we understand what you're doing. If you needed time, take it, but don't abuse it. And I did not abuse it. I was usually back in the village hall by 3:30 every day, and did my phone calls, did this, did that, the other thing. Saturday mornings, more often than not, as you know, there's various different meetings in the evening, whether it's the public safety meeting or this or that, or you're going through the budget process. You've got at least 3, maybe 4 nights with meetings. You got something on a weekend. Something going on, Boo Bash or something is that you have to be at, and it's part of the job of being an elected official in Tinley Park or any community. Visibility. People need to know who you are.
Wow. Let's talk about some of the trials and tribulations of being mayor too. What were some of the? I don't know if you want to go into a whole lot of some of these.
One of the most bizarre ones, and we talked about this the other day. Several years ago, there was a couple that came in, and they were complaining about their neighbor. By the way, one of the worst things I ever had to deal with is neighbor-to-neighbor complaints. Some of them can be really, really vicious. But this one was humorous, that I just kind of dismissed both couples after a while and said, you go fight yourself. One came in and said, we want you to pass, we're complaining about our neighbor. He's got wind chimes, and we don't like wind chimes. And I said, how big are the wind chimes? They said, about that big. I said, oh, all right. Well, I'm not sure we could do anything, blah, 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 blah. Next neighbor comes back and says, I got wind chimes this big. The other one comes back and says, well, they bought wind chimes this big. Then they bought wind chimes this big. It just kind of went along, and finally they came and said, you got to pass the ordinance that you can't have wind chimes in Tinley Park. I said, this is ridiculous. And the other one that used to bother me, and it doesn't happen so much anymore, is that somebody would do a garden in the backyard or put a pool in the backyard, and they'd take out some dirt and they'd throw it in the back of their lot, which is a drainage ditch or drainage area, okay? And it would stop up the property further on up. And then you'd go to the person who did this and said, you know, this is what you did to your neighbors. And sometimes he'd say, well, that's not my problem, it's their problem now. They got a flooding problem. And he's the guy who caused the flooding. Yeah. And there's, you know, you could fix it real quick, but it was frustrating.
Wow. Yeah, there's always some negatives. It sounds like the positive way outweighs the negatives.
Much more so, you know, much more so. You know, one of the things I think that happens a lot in government, especially today in 2015, everybody seems to look at the negative side. Yes. Negative. You know what? Running a government is just like running a business, running a home, running a family. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be mistakes. You try to minimize them as much as you possibly can. Let's say you make a decision on this particular item in a particular year. This is what you have. This is the information you have. Maybe 2 years from now, you now have this much information that may change this. That happens, right. Whether it's a business, whether it's government. And, you know, sometimes you just hear about the negative side. But there's so much that goes on good in Tinley.
Exactly. Well, speaking of, what makes Tinley Park exceptional? What, in your opinion, makes Tinley Park stand out from other communities, do you think?
I think it's a microcosm of a little bit of everything. Let's go back to that Tiffany lamp, okay? The schools, the library, the village, police, fire, chamber, volunteers, churches, the people, okay? People make up the town. One of the things that bothered me the most when I got to be mayor is that we had too many people moving out of town. One of the things that we concentrated on was to get the upper end homes in town so that people would buy their second and third homes. That's one of the things I'm very proud of. I bought my second home in town. My son's in his second home in town, okay? Yep. I think that's neat when you buy the second, third home in town. That's important. That speaks well for the town. Speaks well for the people.
All right. The continuity and the stability. And
they like what's here.
Exactly.
They like what's here.
I'm in my third house in Tinley.
There you go. There you go.
That's kind of good there. How do we maintain this? How do you think we maintain it? And then, what's your vision for the future of Tinley Park?
The vision for the future of Tinley, we've got it's probably about 90, 95, 93% developed. There's land to develop, and those kinds of things will come. But I think what's going to be important to do over the next years as we mature, okay, in a community, it's going to be important for us to keep the village concept together, the family concept, the Caribbean block parties, these kinds of things, bringing people together. I think that makes a difference. One of our concerns when we went with the Caribbean block party is that, well, it's on Oak Park Avenue. How do we get the west side to come to Oak Park Avenue? Because sometimes there's natural boundaries. I-80 is another natural boundary. So we hire buses, the trolley. Park your car at 80th Avenue, we'll drive you, we'll bring you over here, you don't have to worry about parking back and forth. Yeah. I think those kinds of things, that's the future. It's maintaining that kind of idea, that family kind of thing. That's what makes Tinley Park unique.
Wow. Well, I hope it stays that way, yeah.
So do I.
I've always thought, I wish we could keep that small town atmosphere too, and it'd be nice. But it seems like we've kept some of that. We still kept, even though it's grown.
It's hard, Ron.
It's
really hard because you're dealing with a town of 57,000 people. You're dealing with people who are maybe holding 2 jobs. you know, and it's hard. And what do most of the kids do when they get home?
Oh, geez.
My problem is my thumbs are too fat.
Oh, too fast. Mine are too slow. Oh, geez. Wow. Well, tell one other thing I was thinking about. How much time did you spend, would you say, on average, being mayor? What kind of hours would you
When
put
I was
in?
at Brother Rice, I probably spent 25 to 30, 35 hours. Once I retired,
A week?
a week, yeah.
Okay.
Once I retired, I was probably upwards 45 to 50, 55, because that's when I was chairman of the Chicago Metro Council, which represented 273 towns. So there was a lot of involvement. I got a lot more involved in different activities representing the village.
Yeah, mention if you could real quickly the different positions you held, not only at Tinley Park, but you had some other ones too.
Let's see, I was president of the South Suburban Mayors and Managers twice, president or coordinator, whatever you want to call it, of the Chicago Southland Chamber, or not Southland Chamber, but the Metropolitan Council of Mayors that represented, as I said, 273 towns, various different committees from educational to Moraine Valley to, you know, all kinds of different things. And, you know, that's part of what you do when you represent your town. You get involved that way, because each of these meetings, wherever you go, if you could take one piece of information, just one piece, and apply it to your town, the whole meeting's worthwhile.
Oh, yeah. Well, you mentioned one time too that other towns looked at Tinley for guidance sometimes.
It happened many, many times that where, you know, I would be someplace and they would say, let's find out what's going on in Tinley on this issue. They knew how to do it, and they put it together. And I think that'll continue, because we've always been on the cutting edge of different things. Now, you know, again, I have to point out, did we do everything right 100% over the past 34 years? I'll be the first to say, no. But we did the best we could with the information we have. And I think that's the best that anybody could ask for.
And you've gotten some awards too. I just wrote down, what was the recent one you got recently, some award?
It was given to me by the International Economic Development Council. It was an award for leadership in the public sector. And over the years, it was a kind of a lifetime award. Some of the other folks I felt very, very uncomfortable with because of who they were the mayors of Los Angeles, mayor of Las Vegas, and the mayor of Philadelphia were previous winners.
Oh, my.
So I felt in pretty good company.
The Tinley Park mayor with all those. Well, that might as well speak something for your accomplishment.
Well, you know, Ron, I always felt very strongly. If you surround yourself with good people, they make you look good.
I think we've been fortunate, too. We've had some very good people working for Tinley.
Absolutely.
And the boards and all that stuff there. So, well, thank you very much for spending some time reminiscing about your time.
And I appreciate it, Ron, and I really appreciate the confidence that people have put in me in the last 34 years as mayor. It's been a great run, and great people at Tinley Park, and quite frankly, folks, thank you very much.
Wow. Well, yeah, Mayor Zabrocki, 34 years of service to our town. It's hard to find people nowadays willing to spend that kind of time commitment to their town and their village. So we've been fortunate having that. So we wish you all the best of luck in the future and good health.
Thank you.
And we hope we go from there. Thanks for watching Discover Tinley, and have a very excellent Christmas holiday, and hopefully have a very great new year for next year. We'll see you next year.